one of my favorite sermons you've ever spoke this weekend. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. I was on a little mini vacation to Halloween Horror Nights.
Heck yeah.
But watched it this morning and in preparation for this. And I think outside of just being really well delivered, it was really needed in this moment and in this culture. And so many people are shifting their paradigms. So there's this huge kind of transformation within Christianity that I really, really believe to be a good thing.
Yep.
But like with any paradigm shift, it's tough. It's clunky.
Yep.
It goes well for a day and then it goes bad for a day. Like
right.
There's a lot of highs and lows in those transitions. Right. But I think what I see, and this may just be the optimist in me, what I see is this shifting of paradigms within Christianity, but a shifting in paradigm of people that have left this idea of God behind and realizing this life of believing in no God and no community and no belief system or structure to my life is not working. So I see this running to spirituality, and I see this shifting in Christianity, and I really do believe the two worlds are going to collide here soon.
Yeah.
And that's my hope.
Yeah.
And if Christianity can get back to its roots of what Christ had taught us, I think it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful day when we can actually see that.
That's right.
And I hope to see it. So one of the lines you said, I'll jump right into my notes here. You kind of touched on this, but I wanted to expand a little bit. You referenced Peter Enns, and you said sin of certainty. So for people who don't know what that term means, what does that mean?
Yeah. Pete wrote a book years ago, 2014, called Sin of Certainty. And he really challenges this notion of this human inclination of needing certainty in our life, particularly from that religious paradigm you were talking about, that I need to have absolute certain belief that the Bible is 100% the Word of God, that the Bible is 100% accurate in all of its claims and stories. And I have to have absolute certainty that these beliefs that I hold are 100% true and that there can't be any deviation or nuance to that belief. And Pete goes, that's not the way life works. Like, it just, nothing operates that. And any good apologist, even a good apologist, like who's deeply fundamental, like someone like William Lane Craig would admit, to say, we don't live in a world that has absolute certainty on anything. Like that water bottle, you're drinking it, you just open it up, started drinking it. How do you know it's not laced with something?
Right.
How do you know? Are you 100% certain? You go, no, I'm like 99.9. But again, that's the point is, there's nothing. I took my vitamins this morning. How do I know that GNC didn't lace them with some sort of harmful product? And that's where Pete is getting to. So why is religion not sequestered to that same sort of, what we call in philosophy, that epistemic sort of valuation?
Right.
Why does religion have to have 100% certainty in all of these things when every part of my life doesn't have that?
Right.
And so he calls into question that and I'm going to say this Sunday because this Sunday is about the Bible. I'm not going to give too much away, but I can know, because as a scholar of the Bible, I know the Bible is not 100% accurate, but I can still have a very high view of it.
Right.
Right? Because in the same way, I absolutely love and adore and cherish my wife, but she is not perfect.
Right.
But I still love and absolutely adore and cherish her. In the same way, I'm not perfect, but she still loves me. But religion has been wrought through indoctrination and fear-mongering.
I would say fear is the biggest.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And religion in all of its aspects, I mean, we're only touching on 4. Religion per se, God, the Bible, and then week 4 will be hell. That it's more fear-mongering than faith-building. And faith itself is something that I'm not completely certain of. And so fear is not the opposite of faith. You know what the opposite of faith is? What the enemy of faith is? Certainty.
Right.
And so if you are absolutely certain in your faith, congratulations. It's no longer faith. And so that's the whole idea.
Yeah. No, I read that book. It was a while ago now, like 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it completely changed my my world.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved how he orchestrated that entire book in the sense that he uses the Bible as his reference, even though he's like talking about like the sin of certainty and like not utilizing the Bible for your belief structure, but going outside of that. And he pokes a lot of holes in the Bible through that book, but he uses the Bible and says like, hey, we're told to not question, not doubt, and be certain about what we believe. And he points to so many stories within the Bible that do the exact opposite of that. You have these major biblical characters that are questioning God, down to, do you exist? Like, there's Psalms that are writing about like this suffering and like these guys crying out like, God, are you even there? I don't even believe that you exist.
Yeah, you don't even hear me.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought he did a beautiful but gentle job of deconstructing that idea of certainty. And he lays out kind of where the fundamentalist movement kind of came out of, and how it was a response to fear. It was a response to science advancing and, Darwinism and evolutionary theory. And so these Christian leaders were like, we gotta nip this in the bud now.
That's right.
Like this goes against the biblical narrative of creation and how the world came to an existence. And we need to lay these things out as like, no, we're certain about what we believe. This is what it means to be a Christian. Yeah. And prior to that, everybody just was like that. They just took the Bible as it was. Like, it was history.
That's right.
And then science starts kind of pushing up against that idea a little bit.
It's corrosive to it, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he also does, between him and Mike McCarg, Science Mike, I can't remember his last say his last name. Yep. They do a beautiful job of like, and even Rob Bell does a really good job of like, blend, like science and religion don't have to be at odds. No. They actually, Rob Bell does this amazing like showing of like, God can be so much bigger when you embrace this, because it's like there is a lot of mystery in science. That's and we're just trying to figure this out, but like God is alive in a lot of these things.
That's it.
So it just makes God that much bigger.
That's right.
And so they do a really good job of blending the two.
Yeah.
But again, like Peter Enns' Sin of Certainty is a fantastic book. I highly recommend that.
Absolutely. Easy read too, man.
Yeah.
Easy to read.
He makes it palatable for everyone. It's not just scholarly work.
And this guy's PhD from Harvard University.
Yeah,
dude. He's a boss.
It's smart. It's smart to do that, because like if you're really trying to touch the masses, like it's always great to show how scholarly you are and how smart you are, but making things palatable and that everyone can access your book, not just the scholars.
That's right.
A, it's harder to do.
Yep.
Yeah. But B, it's so much more effective.
Yep.
So another point that I loved, and it was kind of in reference to our one more thing from last week, is God is all powerful and all loving. And I love how you broke this down. Like, okay, God is all powerful. So why is there so much suffering in the world? And God is all loving. So why is there so much suffering in the world? So if he allows this much suffering, then he must not be all powerful and all loving. But then you point it back to the person, or like, what are you going to do about it? And I think that's such a prudent point, because our kids, you have kids, I have kids, they hurt each other.
That's right.
Does it break your heart when they hurt each other?
That's right.
But we say, what are you going to do about it?
That's it.
You need to make this right with your sister.
That's it.
You need to be the one stopping and hurting. I'm not hovering over my kids at all 24/7, and we shouldn't as parents.
That's right.
Because then where's their free will? Where's their ability to grow as humans?
That's right.
Like, and suffering is just part of growth. It just is.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to this pastor the other day, and he said it perfectly. He's like, and this was in response to suffering. He's like, God didn't spare Daniel from the lion's den.
That's right.
He was in the den.
That's right.
God,
was with him.
He was with him in there.
That's it.
God didn't spare Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the furnace. They went in.
Yep.
But he was there with them.
That's right.
And I think that's a really, really important part of this idea of suffering. Is like, just because we believe in God, in this version of God, doesn't mean we're spared of suffering. And it doesn't mean that God doesn't allow suffering in the world.
That's right.
But
And I don't even say it's as much of a allowing, right? Because the point I made is, okay, to the atheist, agnostic, whatever. All right, so God doesn't exist. Does suffering still exist? Okay, so who's responsible for that now?
Right.
We are culpable. And so I use the example of, let's say, I don't know, we have a friend, we have a mutual friend or something. It's all theoretical. And they have an affair in their marriage. Most suffering has to have an action occur to cause the suffering.
Right.
Once that action happens, then the suffering happens. So there's always some initiation
Right.
into suffering. So what can't we do? We can't take back what action our friend has done, but what we can do is be there, like you said, for them, to give them strength, to help heal that process,
Right.
through that process. And I think that's what God does. Is God, for me, can only do what is logically possible. When we say all powerful, we have this imaginative sort of, Marvel universe, DC Comics universe. Superman can do anything. Well, even Superman has kryptonite, right?
Right.
And they had to give him a weakness because we cannot relate to any being that has no weakness. So in maybe some way, God has limited himself to the logicality of his own rules and laws of physics or whatever. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, God cannot make 2 + 2 = 8. He can't make a square circle because it would cease to be a circle or a square, right? There are only things that are logically possible for God because he creates these rules. And so he's not going to stop bombs once they've been launched, right? That's just it's not possible. Now, we can create technology, the Iron Dome and all those things. But I think that's the point, is we are responsible for the suffering of the world. Like, we are. And you say, well, what about natural disasters and hurricanes and things like that? Well, if you know anything about meteorology, hurricanes have to happen. Like, I was thinking about this on the way to work this morning because I knew you'd probably bring up something from that. And I said, can God stop the world from spinning? Yes, maybe. But then everyone on the world would die. Like, that wouldn't do any good, like, to prove his power.
Right.
And in the same way, like, I lost my train of thought, but the notion is I shouldn't expect God to do something that isn't really possible to be done. Like, I remember, man, like, when I went through my divorce and that painful time, I was just praying, like, God, take this pain away, take this pain away. And we have this old saying, like, time heals all wounds. Well, no, time is a part of that equation, but it's love that heals those wounds. It's being loved again, understanding that I'm still loved, even though I'm being shunned by some because pastors don't get divorced or whatever the case may be. We've made mistakes in our life. It's not just time that heals it, it's love that heals it. And that's why I think it's apropos to say God didn't prevent Daniel from getting in that den, or Meshach, Abednego from getting in the fire. He was there with them. And God is not going to stop you from suffering. He will be there with you. And that's what I said in the sermon. I can't see God, but I can see God in things. And it's not just beautiful things, Rick. It's like, it's easy to see God in the sunset. It's easy to see God in love. But this morning I'm driving to work. Golly, I'm getting chills thinking about it. And there was this lady walking with her daughter who had physical and mental differences. Like, she had Down syndrome. And the mom was old and the daughter was old. But there was the mom holding her hand, walking down the sidewalk, and the girl was having struggles walking. That's a struggle, bro. But I saw God in that struggle.
Right.
And it's when I'm looking for the good that I most likely will find it. Well, how can we see the good in what's going on in the Middle East? I don't know, but keep looking. Look deeper.
Yeah. Look for the helpers.
That's it. Yeah. Look deeper, man. And so I think...
Well, and I think that, that goes to a larger point as far as, like, people think that there's more suffering in the world today than there was 50 years ago, 100 years ago. But that's simply not true.
No.
From a data statistical standpoint, that's just not true.
Right.
What is true is that we have more access to information.
Yep.
If you wanted to know what was going on in the world, you had to read a newspaper or watch the 6 o'clock news 30, 40, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the case now.
No.
We have Twitter, we have apps, and we have websites that are constantly feeding us the news of the world. I don't think we're built to handle that.
No.
Because there's one thing you can guarantee is that there is going to be suffering in the world.
Yep.
I would love this ideal of no suffering in the world, but I just don't think that is realistic.
It's not going to happen.
But we are making progress on suffering. There are less people that are starving to death in the world today than there were 50 years ago. There are less people. There are less crimes. And I know it's hard for us to grasp. It's really, really hard for us to grasp with what's happening in the world.
Especially
right
when
now.
it's in your family, your life.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Sickness. Like, imagine cancer 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it was done. You were done.
Yeah.
Now we have a
fighting chance. Exactly.
And that's the thing, man. You said something very profound there. The way I say it is, when you have a wealth of information, you have a poverty of attention, because we consume so much information that our attentiveness, we can't stop and look. You know, we want that information. We want that information, man. In my news feed and my Facebook feed, it's all it is information I'm getting.
Right.
Whether that information is politically motivated or whether it's just families posting pictures from horror nights or whatever, that's just information. But where's my attention? Where's my attention? And I think that's what God calls us to, is I can see the good, even in the struggle, not just the beautiful, if I'm attentive.
Yeah.
If I'm attuned. And that's what I try, man, my best to live my life. And again, we live in freaking paradise. So, I mean, there's so many beautiful things to see here. But I mean, dude, that just moved me this morning to see that mom, that older mom with an older daughter who she's probably cared for her entire life. And she would never look at me and go, yeah, that stuff was easy. She's like, it was a struggle.
Right.
But love is what pushed me.
Right.
And there's a cool story. I mentioned in a staff meeting, my grandmother passed away in 2017. My grandfather in 2009, so they weren't too far apart. But my mom told me this story that her kids were all around her in that bedroom. And my grandmother just looked up at everybody and said, y'all need to get out of here. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And she goes, your love is keeping me here.
Oh.
Your love is keeping me here.
Yeah.
I just need you guys to give me a moment with God.
Dang.
And she goes, your love is keeping me here. There was no news flashes. Their complete attention and love was focused on her. And she's like, your love's keeping me here. Like, from my dying grandmother, dude. And that's the power. Like, we talk about love a lot. Mm-hmm. But it's not some ethereal thing, dude. It's not some abstract concept where we're just like, oh, be a flower child, love everyone. No, dude, it is a power. It is a power that overcomes evil, you know? And that's what's paradigm shifting. I think that you're seeing the collision of worlds is this love. Like, and so that's what we drive for, man.
Right.
So
this whole sermon was centered around this idea of fear of God.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to an interview with a guy the other day, and he was basically given, he was looking for a religion. And the interviewer asked him, why didn't you choose Christianity? Because he ended up choosing to be Muslim. Mm-hmm. And his biggest criticism of Christianity was that they don't have a fear of God.
Yeah.
And Muslims do. He's like, I think if you're going to worship a God, they must be feared. What would your response be to that?
Yeah. No. No. It's the age-old question, is it better to be feared or loved? Mm-hmm. And
Michael Scott would say both.
Yeah.
I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that office quote. Man. No. And again, I would ask him to read the Quran, like reread it, and I'll say this Sunday, like, many people want to defend a book they haven't even read.
Yeah.
And if that's your basis for choosing a religion, that you want to fear the God, then I would say authentic Islam is not the right choice. It's not that wouldn't be the right choice, at least not from what I understand of Islam. Because I see the 5 pillars, and those are not based around fear. Those are based around service and love for the fellow human, but not out of some fear of like eternal punishment. It's fear that my brother will be left behind. Like that's the fear that in my understanding of the pillars of Islam and the Shahada and the Psalm and whatever, all the other the Hajj and all of these pillars that make it up. It's to build not only myself but the other as well.
Yeah.
To take care of people. And that's Christianity in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Jesus says, like, you have to look after the orphans, the widows, those who have no one to help build them, those who've lost people. So yeah, no, for me, God doesn't call us toward fear. I mean, the verse I read in 1 John,
which was great.
Clearly states that out is, if you fear God, it's because there is an element of punishment that is part of that God equation for you. Remove that.
Yeah.
Remove that. In the same way I asked the atheist, remove God from the equation. Does suffering still exist? Yes. Remove punishment from the equation. Does God still exist? And if you say no, then you have the wrong concept of God, man. God is not looking to punish us. He's not looking to send us off to some eternal conscious torment because we didn't believe correctly.
Yeah.
Or say certain prayers after a preacher.
Or Christ hadn't come yet to die for us.
Yeah.
So.
So I would absolutely vehemently disagree with that guy.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, man.
Yeah.
Because that will lead you. Fear brings out the worst in humanity, not the best.
I would 100% agree with that.
That's my argument.
Yeah. I hope, I think that obviously kids are kids and they'll always have a fear of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to do this because I may get in trouble with mommy and daddy.
Yep.
But my hope is that they're predominantly making choices because it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
Not because it's out of fear of a punishment from their parents. I'm hoping if we're doing our job right, I hope that the leading reason behind any action is not for fear of punishment, but a desire to be good and to do what's right.
That's right.
So you said in the sermon, since you segued into this, you said you believe, on the topic of hell, you believe that God only gives us what we deserve in terms of hell. And you kind of moved on from that. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the point I was making for that was this idea of hell. And again, that'll be how we conclude the series, that we shouldn't fear hell. That I'm all for people getting what they deserve for what they've done, but not anymore. Mm-hmm. And the notion of a person who, again, I'm not going to the extreme of like people who've harmed children or like Hitler. I mean,
the straw man. Yeah.
Super straw man arguments. I'm just like the person who stole something, right? Who lied.
Right.
But for the most part, just like really didn't intentionally harm people, like kill people, but never prayed the sinner's prayer, like never believed Jesus was the Son of God and died for their sins, or all these atonement theories that are out there. And he dies. Like, okay, because he didn't believe in Jesus. The worst thing this guy's ever done is lied, maybe stole some money, and he has to suffer for trillions and trillions and trillions of years. Like, bro, like I would never enact any sort of punishment on my child like that. That'd be equivalent to like me telling Aslan, hey, don't take any cookies out of that cookie jar or else I'm gonna punish you. And I see her do it and I cut her hand off.
Yeah.
You would call CPS on me, bro.
Mm-hmm. And
like,
you'd be in jail.
I would be in jail.
Yeah.
But I would be justified in my wrath and my justice. Like my justice is not your justice. Like that, even that example of me cutting Aslan's hand off doesn't befit any base rationalization we have of what true justice is.
Yeah.
And so that's where I went with it. But when fear is the motivator, 100 trillion years makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when love is the motivator, the limitation makes the most sense. Getting what is due and nothing more. And so,
and I think, and I'll end on this. I think what you said at the end is, why would God say love your enemies, but he doesn't? And I think that was the best point that you made in the entire sermon, is like, God calls us to love our enemies, but he's not going to.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
And I think that was a beautiful, beautiful point.
Thanks,
and
man.
It was a checkmate on anything else. Like, this version of Christianity is harder.
Yes.
And it is harder because it goes against what we instinctively believe to be true and right.
That's it.
And as hard as it is, you have to pray for those Hamas.
Absolutely.
You have to pray for those Russians.
That's right.
It is like, I can't even imagine. I want them to experience so much pain because of the pain that they're causing.
That's right.
But you have to pray for them.
Yep.
And so, and I know that you were talking about, I think it was a cousin that was getting some flack for showing sympathy to
Palestinians.
The people in Palestine because of
she felt judged by the people who were bringing it up in their conversation. She goes, yeah, but I also feel compassion for these Palestinians who aren't a part of Hamas, like, who are there and have to experience this retaliatory action.
Yeah.
And that is the good suffering for the bad. And that doesn't register in my mind of what true justice is either. And she was judged by it. And she goes, they're all animals. They're just blah, 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 and this and that. And she goes, no, but I still feel compassion.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the point that you made. Your view or image of God directly impacts how you view the world and how you treat people. And I'm seeing a lot of Christians celebrating civilian death and justifying it in the sense, well, they elected Hamas and they were the ones that put these people in power. Those children didn't do that.
No.
And how many times have you made a mistake and you're like, man, crap, this wasn't the right choice. Yeah. And now I'm dead.
I mean, or you're in America. How many times have our politicians fulfilled their claims that they're going to do that? And that's what Hamas has been in there since, 06, 07.
Yeah.
And their claims were not terroristic claims.
Right.
They were claims of, hey, we're going to work, and not promises of we're going to destroy Israel. That came later.
Right.
And so we've seen our own politicians who we voted for flip the script on us, just like they have, man.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I'm excited for this weekend, man. So you're going to keep going. You're going to, this week will be on the Bible.
The Bible. We shouldn't fear the Bible. We're going to hopefully, through rigorous study and scholarship, set the record straight on what kind of book it is and what kind of book it isn't. Mm-hmm. And therefore, how should we approach it? Like, how should we approach the Bible? How should we read the Bible? And what should the Bible say to me about how I live my life? And that's gonna be a hard lesson, man. Pray for me.
I will.
I
will. But I know it'll be great, and I know you'll do it from a compassionate standpoint.
For sure,
man. So I appreciate all you do, and thanks for being on the One More Thing, man.
Got it, Rick. Thanks, man.